Hi, Britt Davenport here, and welcome to another episode of On the Vice. Tonight we're going to be tying a Lady McConnell variation. This pattern was developed by Brian Chan of British Columbia to imitate the partially emerged adult chironomid. That can also represent an egg-laying one. I've had good success on our local lakes with it, generally just before the sun goes down. So with that, let's go to the vise. To start, we'll be using Ahrex freshwater 503s in size 12, which is just the dry fly, light barbless. Doesn't have to be light, it's just what I had around. So we're going to put the hook in the vise. Remember, if you're using Norvise, you want to make sure that hook shank is coming straight off the jaws. That's what's going to allow it to spin on that center axis. For thread, we're just using Semperfli Classic Wax in black A-dot. Just going to get my thread started about 1/3 of the way back. I'm going to lay down a nice little thread base. Now for the Shuck, we are using just Semperfli Polyyarn in cream. And I've taken it and I've split it in half because otherwise it's too thick, so this is half of a hank of it. Take that up and under. Just secure that right on top of that hook shank. And trim those butt sections out. And now you want the Shuck to be about the length of the hook shank, so if you just pull that forward, you can trim it off, and that should give you about the right length. On top of that, we're going to use just a tip from a grizzly hackle. So, you know, those little tips that you don't have much use for unless you tie a bunch of atoms. This is another instance of using that. Just going to take 2 soft wraps with it right on top of that hook shank. And then you can kind of pull it to the desired length. And it should be about twice the length of that Shuck. Again, make sure it's still right on top of the hook shank. They do tend to roll around a little bit. And then you can just wind that down. And cut those buttons out. For the ShellBack, we're going to be using just some natural body hair. This is the natural color for stimulator deer hair from Nature's Spirit. You don't need a huge clump for this. So it's just going to be the ShellBack. We're not using it for a wing or anything like that. Go ahead and clean the fluff out of it. Advance your thread to that 1/3 point. I'm just going to clip those tips off. We don't need those. And we'll tie it in right there at that 1/3 point. In front of that, we're going to have Hackle. So just keep that in mind. Take loose wraps all the way to the rear. By leaving those loose wraps, that leaves some air in that hair and it'll help with the buoyancy. For the body, the pattern calls for dubbing, but I'm going to use Straggle string in the Litchen color. It's probably one of my favorite colors of Straggle string. So I'm just going to capture that, tie in, and then just loose wraps to the front again. You don't want to mash all of that hair down underneath it. Bring your thread over to your thread post, and then I like to tighten my thread, my tension knob on the top, just so I have more control, especially working around the hook point. And then make sure you have a pretty good tension on that. It is stretchy, so make sure you don't have a bunch of slop in it. Wrap that up to that body end point, and you can go ahead and trim that out. Now we're going to carefully take these butt ends, gather them up. If you miss one or two, that's fine, we'll trim them out later. I like to take my hand and kind of push those straggles to the side. And you can just pull that over. This is going to be our ShellBack, so it'll be just kind of like a humpy. So take some wraps to secure that. You want to make sure it stays on the top of the hook. And then you can just trim those butt ends out, trim them at an angle. And the little guy come loose, so I'll trim him out. And then just wrap those butt ends down. Try to make a nice even base here in the front for your hackle. You want to have a nice platform for it. Now for the hackle, we're just using grizzly hackle, sized appropriately for the hook. So this is a size 12. Gonna go ahead and just tie that in. Bring our thread forward, and then you can throw a half hitch in there if you want to use the rotary aspect of the vise to wrap that hackle. Bring your thread over to your thread post. Locate your hackle pliers, because they always tend to run off. That first wrap I really like to do just by hand to make sure it's not going to twist any weird ways or anything like that. So once I get that first wrap in, just grab it with the hackle pliers, and then I can use the vise to do the rest of it. And tie that off, and then pull everything back, and we're just going to make a nice little head and kind of dogleg that hackle stem back. That way there's no chance of that coming undone. Go ahead and put a 4 or 5 turn whip finish in there. Trim your thread. And then if you want, you can put a dab of head cement on there. I'm using Solarlac, excuse me, I can't hardly say it. So I'm just going to put a drop of that there. Make sure you don't get any in the eye. If you do, you can just run a feather tip through it to clear it out. And there we have it. It's a Lady McConnell variation using Semperfli Straggle string for the body. Thank you for joining us on another episode of On the Vise, brought to you by Hackles and Hurl Fly Fishing. If you find this content valuable, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We greatly appreciate it. If you want notifications, be sure to click the bell. We're hoping to do at least one video a week from here on out. We do love to have feedback from you, so drop a comment down below, questions, suggestions on what you'd like to see in the future. Just let us know and we'd be happy to accommodate. And we also provide custom order flies, so if you're looking to add some flies to your box, let us know and we'll see what we can do for you. Again, thank you, and we'll talk to you next time.